Salt and Sacrifice is a divisive sequel with a bit of an identity crisis. While its combat is strong, will its mage hunting loop keep you coming back for more? With that being said, hey, I'm Ray, and this is Obsession, and today we're looking at Salt and Sacrifice. As always, before we dive into Salt and Sacrifice, a quick recap of what it means to be an obsession-worthy game. An obsession-worthy game is a game that can be played over 100 hours, over multiple playthroughs, often back-to-back. To determine this, I look at if a game can provide fun and unique mechanics, meaningful build variety, unique playthroughs, and ease of replay. With that out of the way, let's get to the discussion. Salt and Sacrifice is the follow-up to Ska Studios' 2D Metroidvania Souls-like Salt and Sanctuary. It is important to acknowledge up front that while the two games come off as similar on the surface, they are quite different in their structure and execution. I'll be making some comparisons throughout the video, given the fact that if you're interested in Salt and Sacrifice, it's probably because you enjoyed Salt and Sanctuary. However, I'll be sure to make all points make sense without the context of the first game for those that haven't played it. Salt and Sacrifice sees you as an inquisitor, a criminal forced to hunt mages, even through undeath. Most of the story is told through dialogue and encounters with characters that could easily be missed, a staple of the Souls-like genre. There are also hints at lore through dialogue with defeated mages, as well as through some environmental storytelling. So, while there's a bit of a story going on throughout the game, it's not the main selling point of the game. The true selling point of the game is the mage hunts. As we get started talking about the mage hunts, it's important to address how the map of the game works, or rather maps. You see, unlike its predecessor, Salt and Sacrifice doesn't have one large, open, Metroidvania-style map. Instead, it has 5 sectioned-off maps, each having their own Metroidvania-style exploration with different traversal techniques gained throughout the game, such as a grappling hook that can grab onto ledges and, well, hooks, as well as a sailcloth that can soar up when there's a magical upwind. These different pieces of equipment were often locked behind boss battles. And I don't mean mage hunts, because bosses and mages are two different things in this game. You see, in addition to the mages themselves, each map has 2 static bosses on them. These are enemies that once you defeat them, they're gone. You don't re-encounter them like you do with the mages. And instead of dropping materials as loot, they drop relics and different other pieces of equipment that can affect your build. These bosses often have a similar vibe and feeling to the bosses of Salt and Sanctuary. I honestly don't have a lot to say about the bosses, not because they're not good, but just because they're there. They're fun, but they don't stand out compared to a lot of the other changes that the game has made. So back to the maps and mage hunts. As you explore these maps using the different traversal techniques, you'll come across different bodies. These have been killed by a mage, and more specifically, a named mage. For instance, you'll find a charred corpse early on in the game, and the mage that you're going to hunt is going to be a fire mage. Later on, you will find one that is completely frozen solid, and that is an ice mage that you'll be hunting. They kind of give a hint as to what's to come. Interacting with that body is what kicks off this main loop of the game, actually hunting mages. After interacting with the body, you'll be shown an on-screen indicator of which direction the mage can be found. You traverse the map, sometimes very short distances, other times halfway across the map, which can get frustrating later on in the game. But after traversal, you actually find the mage, and the hunt begins. The first portion of the hunt sees you fighting the mage throughout the map. The mage will spawn in different mobs specific to itself. These mobs can be fought and they drop materials from the mage. Also, random enemies across the map will also fight the mage for you. Additionally, especially later into the game, mages can come across other random mages and will fight each other on the map as well. Some people find this a little bit annoying and feels like it gets in the way of the hunt. I actually find the chaos really exciting, never knowing if you're going to come across a mage solo, have to fight its little mobs and move on, or if there will be an all-out battle going on screen. It feels very reminiscent to modern Monster Hunter, where monsters can come across each other and do turf wars. It has that same feeling. I don't think that these get in the way, and like I said, I think that it adds to the hectic chaos that's a lot of fun. But after chasing down the mage long enough, it will go back to its lair, and this is where the actual true boss fight starts. These fights shift away from the new style of tracking down a mage, kind of to the old style of Salt and Sanctuary, where you're fighting a boss in an enclosed area. The moves often fill up most of the screen and make the fights themselves very chaotic, and also, usually, very rewarding to beat. There are some exceptions to this. Later on in the game, there are certain bosses that have combos and moves that are extremely difficult to dodge, will completely combo you if you try to block them and kill you outright. The difficulty does get really high in these, but it's still pretty fun. There were several mages that I was able to take down maybe on the first try. Most mages took 2 or 3 fights, and there was a few that took easily into the double digits. These fights, I don't know if it was a skill issue on my end or a balancing issue on the game's end, but those few fights really kind of took away some of the fun of this game. The 2 in particular that come to mind were the Diablomancer and the Umbramancer. Both hit like trucks, both have a lot of arena control, and both have combos that can just... It doesn't matter if you dodge or block, unless you execute perfectly, you're going to die. Now, while those are low points in my opinion, I don't think that they ruined the game by any means. You see, there's a common complaint that Salt and Sacrifice is a very grindy game, seeing you fighting the same boss over and over again, and it can be if you play that way, but I didn't play that way, and it wasn't intentional or otherwise, just you don't have to fight the same bosses over and over again. I'll get into it a little bit more while you may want to, but the game is perfectly doable just to fight every boss once and go straight to the end. When you beat a boss, they drop materials. These materials can be used at the hub area to craft new weapons and armor, a la Monster Hunter. If you really want to get a full set of armor, weapons, a ring, and dagger from the same boss, there will be a lot of grinding in this game. They drop quite a bit of materials, but definitely not enough to cover making every piece of equipment. That being said, pretty much all encounters with mages drop enough materials to make at least 1 or 2 pieces of equipment. So that means if you're just looking for, say, the weapon, or the chest piece, or whatever, you only need to fight the mage once and you get more than enough to create that and move on with life. Because unlike Monster Hunter, you don't need to use materials to actually progress the gear through its upgrade path. Instead, you bring certain items to the smith to upgrade your equipment. These are similar to like Titanite shards and Dark Souls. This upgrade style is a little bit more similar to Salt and Sanctuary. So again, while you could fight the same mages over and over again to get a full set of equipment, you really don't have to. On my playthrough, I stuck mostly with glaives and later on introduced staves into my build, but just used enough light armor that I got some protection while still only having enough pieces that still allowed me to light roll through other attacks. Because of this, I didn't need a full set of armor, and therefore I didn't need to hunt the same mage to get a full set of armor. Likewise, I just would mostly use mage materials to craft new weapons, so the grind really wasn't necessary. That being said, I did fight a few mages a couple times just because it was fun and I wanted to. While it can feel grindy if you feel like that loop is necessary, it's actually just kind of fun and frees up, ooh, I just want to do this because I'm bored, which I like. You don't always have to be progressing towards something in a game if you're just enjoying yourself. On the topic of crafting and weapons, there's plenty of weapon variety throughout the game. There are 13 classes of melee weapons and 6 classes of ranged weapons, which is another distinction between Salt and Sacrifice and Salt and Sanctuary. Unlike Salt and Sanctuary, where you just had 2 equipped weapons, you have 2 equipped melee weapons in Salt and Sacrifice, as well as a dedicated slot for a ranged weapon. That way, any build can incorporate some sort of range within it. Each class of weapon has its own unique moveset. This alone creates plenty of variety, but each individual weapon has a set of skills known as runes or glyphs. These are in no way a necessary part of the game, but a part of the game that really is fun to experiment with. You see, just like in Salt and Sanctuary, Salt and Sacrifice has a very complex looking skill web that when you level up, you get points that can allocate into different nodes on the web. The nodes are broken between different individual stat increases as well as class skills, which are you can have class 1 Vanguard, class 2 Vanguard, and so on. You can have class 1 heavy armor, class 2 heavy armor, and so on. But there are also nodes that are class 1 through 5 of glyphs and runes. These unlock latent magic abilities within most weapons. The abilities themselves often mimic attacks from the mage that you just hunted to get that weapon. I ended up using the Staff of the Neuromancer, the Mind Flayer boss that you may have seen earlier, and it had some really good moves on it. For instance, it had this move that created a little bit of a grid across the screen that whenever an enemy was in that grid would take damage. And considering how big most bosses and mages are in this game, it was a really easy way to kind of deal passive damage while also focusing on your melee and actually getting in big chunks of damage. Again, these glyphs and runes are in no way required to play the game. As a matter of fact, I played through a lot of the game without realizing what they were and how to access them. But in order to access them, you have to have somewhat of a hybrid build. You can create a pure strength or a pure dex build and just use, great hammers or katanas, but you might not have access to these runes and glyphs. Likewise, you could make a pure arcane or pure faith build and just use these runes and glyphs, but some of the better glyphs and runes are on high tier weapons, which require some investment into that skill tree. So I would say that it's maybe, I don't know if it's optimal, but I found it ideal to do a hybrid of picking which weapon you want and then picking if you need runes versus glyphs. All this to be said, the build variety within Salt and Sacrifice I found to be really fun to play with and also very meaningful. You have to kind of commit a little bit to a build, but every couple levels you do get a special skill point that actually can refund a point off of the skill tree. That way you can pivot and do different things on the skill tree and not be locked in whatever you started right at the beginning of the game. But it's still permanent enough that it does matter, and different playthroughs will feel unique from that standpoint. Speaking of unique playthroughs, builds are really going to be the way that makes this game so unique. There are different little NPC quest lines that you can interact with or ignore, similar to most games in the Souls-like genre. And while there is some variance in which order you can fight named mages, you still have to fight a majority of them, because throughout the game you'll come across these doors that are locked off until you have cleared a certain number of named mage hunts. They work as sort of checkpoints and are making sure that you're actually interacting with the game. They also help kind of balance progression, locking off really high-end areas behind doors that need you to fight off more named mages. It works, but it also makes it so that you are beating every boss every time, with the exception of maybe one or two. In my playthrough, I actually missed the Cryomancer hunt until basically the very end of the game. It wasn't required for me to do it, but I wanted to make sure that I hunted every mage at least once, so I had to go back and do that. So all in all, my first playthrough of Salt and Sacrifice was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed this game. If you go in expecting more Salt and Sanctuary, you will be disappointed. If you go in really wanting to max out all your gear and also don't want to grind, it could be disappointing. But if you either go in with the mindset that you're going to grind a little bit for some gear, or go in with the mindset of I don't need every piece of gear and therefore don't grind, it was a lot of fun. There were some platforming sections, especially later in the game, that for me were quite challenging. I'm really not a fan of platformers and therefore sucked at them and died several times to them. It kind of ruined my experience towards the end of the game a little bit, but if you like platformers or have any amount of skill at them, they're really not that bad and may actually add to your enjoyment of the game. Another negative that I ran into more than once was that sometimes enemies would get right on the edge of a platform that you need to jump on and kind of block you from progressing without using a ton of your ranged weapons to get them off. I think it was intentional, but it just felt frustrating, for me at least. You are given the tools that you need to solve that issue. However, I sometimes like to save my ranged weapons for the actual mage hunt rather than the mobs that would just be ledge guarding. You are invincible when you grab onto a ledge and pull yourself up, but often mobs would kind of wind up an attack and hit you as soon as your vulnerability came back. So there were some things that did kind of annoy me in this game. I'm not going to say that it was a perfect experience by any means, though. Like I said just a little bit ago, I really did enjoy it. It was a very enjoyable game, just not perfect. And before we get to the conclusion of, do I find this game obsession worthy or not, I think that kind of answers the question of is it fun, but I also want to answer how easy it is to replay. And frankly, it's quite easy to replay. There is a tutorial at the beginning of the game, but unlike most tutorials, it is optional. You can just hold a button and completely skip it, wake up in the hub area, and go. So there really is nothing stopping subsequent replays from just getting off the ground and going. So as far as ease of replay, near perfect score. So that leads us to the question of the day. Is Salt and Sacrifice obsession worthy? Honestly, I think so. I think it is. It definitely has what it takes between the amount of build variety. The mage hunts themselves are quite a lot of fun. Getting to your next playthrough is going to be quick and easy with a skippable tutorial. There's plenty to keep you coming back. That being said, it's by no means a perfect game. It has a mixed reception, and I can kind of see why that is. I think a lot of it, unfortunately, comes from expectation mismatch. People wanted a sequel to Salt and Sanctuary, meaning they wanted more Salt and Sanctuary, and that's not what they got. But when you take it just as a standalone game, it was a lot of fun. A flawed experience to be sure, but nevertheless, a lot of fun. It's a pretty short experience and easy to replay. As a matter of fact, while I'm not recording it, I'm most of the way through a second playthrough on this game as well. So it definitely has its draw and appeal. It might not be for everybody, but I definitely say if you give it a try and like it, there's a very good chance that you will be able to stick with this game for a very long time. So there you have it, my thoughts on Salt and Sacrifice. A really fun game with some flaws mixed in there. If you guys really are interested in this game or want to see more about it, let me know. I do plan on moving on to my next game next week. However, like I said, I'm playing this one kind of in my own free time. If you want to see more on this game, I'd be happy to share, tips and tricks, or just kind of show different runs, different challenge runs, single weapons. I'm just kind of looking for a reason to play this. I don't know how well this video will do because it's a bit of a niche game, but if you like it, let me know and maybe I'll do a little bit more content on it. I think moving forward, I'm going to be doing more content on games rather than just a one and done obsession. I'm tossing around the idea of doing a new series called Start Here, where I give you kind of basic mechanics to understand and tips to getting started in a new game that I cover. I'm also looking at a few other series, though not as solidified on any of them, so I won't mention too many of them here. But again, let me know your thoughts on this game and any game that I cover in the future on whether or not you want to see more content, because I want to spend a little bit more time with some of these games. But regardless, I hope to see you again soon, and until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope that you know that you truly matter in this world. Take care.